Now we are going to look at the future, what we are doing and what we are going to do in the next years to come. And I would like to start with my colleague Nathalie Baer, who has done a lot for this working party and for patient involvement in general at the agency. And she will give us a 360 view of patient and consumer at the EMA. Please, Nathalie.
Thank you very much, Isabel. So good afternoon. So yes, I think you've heard a lot this afternoon about sort of the journey and what we've achieved so far. So with this, we really wanted just to give you a sort of update of where we are today, what's the near future, and kind of from a 360 viewpoint. So who are we? I mean, you know who we are, but I just thought this was a very nice graphic to really show that the sum of the PCWP is really more important than the sum of its parts. So each of these member representatives here are equally important. And I think the richness of the group together is what makes the uniqueness of the platform, which is the PCWP. So of course we have the 20 patient and consumer organizations, and you bring representation of patients and consumers from across Europe, millions of patients across a vast array of different diseases and conditions. We have the small but dedicated team here at the EMA. We also have representatives from each of the committees, and this brings in the link from the scientific committees. And we also have other observers, so from the management board, sometimes from the commission, from the Mutual Recognition and Decentralized Procedures Committee, also from the Healthcare Professionals Working Party, and also, whenever possible, from the other eligible organizations as well, and let them join in. So what is the raison d'etre of the PCWP? I mean, what are we? And I think what we can say firstly is we really are this platform for dialogue and exchange of information. And here really the key word is dialogue. It's not just to exchange information, but it's really having this two-way input which really makes a change and makes a difference to the outputs. And on the other hand as well, the responsibility is to really oversee patient engagement across the whole agency in all of the different activities. And here we can just see really some of the key areas that have resulted in change from this use of the platform and the mutual exchange of dialogue. And for example, the revision of the framework of interaction. We brought it up to date to reflect well the way we're working today. We've revised the eligibility criteria for patient organizations, making sure that together with you we come up with something that is fair and transparent for everybody. Consultations from across the board from all the different stakeholders. Looking to make sure we have the medicine's life cycle involvement, opportunities across the whole medicine's life cycle. Ensure we keep up with increased transparency. Also as well, keeping this vital interaction with the healthcare professionals and looking where we can benefit from each other. And of course the documents from the public to make sure that everything we do, we make sure that that's properly written for the target audience so that they know what's happening here at the agency and from your side too. So I think what we've learned along the way as well is that there are different ways to engage with patients. We're often asked, so what is the best methodology? You've got 10 years experience now, so what is the best way to engage with patients and consumers? Well, our experience shows that really one size doesn't fit all. And what we'd rather say is that you need a basket. And in this basket, you need to have different ways to engage with patients. And it really depends on what is the activity, what is the level of input you would like, who are you consulting, and what is it for? So, for example, we have face-to-face consultations and involvement. Sometimes it's in writing. Maybe it works better that way. We also have you involved in the committee meetings. Sometimes it's surveys. We want to address a wider group of patients. And also the new work on eliciting patient preferences in a sort of quantitative way of gathering data. So we need to have this basket or this menu that we can then use when, on a case-by-case basis, we want to engage with patients. So there's not one best methodology. Following on from this, of course, to ensure that patients and consumers can participate in the most optimal way possible, we need to make sure that there is adequate and robust system for support, training, and awareness. And again, we need to have a toolkit. We need to make sure that we can have as many different ways in place to support you and train you and to raise awareness. We have our annual training day, which we try to make as interactive as possible and have, sessions which give you a real sort of simulation of what it can be like participating in the different activities. We have short video clips from the different areas that we're working on. They're sort of voiceover slides, and we dedicate it to different topics, trying to make them not more than a few minutes long so that they don't take too long to look at. Info sheets as well. These are very simple sheets to share before you're coming to a specific activity. And of course, the one-to-one personalized support that is vital when you're coming to participate in a specific activity, especially when it's a medicine-related discussion, perhaps at a committee or a SAG meeting. You need to be properly briefed and understand what is going to be the focus of the discussion. Also, what is expectations from both sides. I think it's very important to understand that too. And our web pages, which have recently been revamped, and we're still working on them to really make sure that we can have easy to navigate, easy to find information for patients and consumers on the medicines that we have, but also on the ways that you can be involved as individuals or through your organizations. Now, one key area, and I think you've heard already a little bit about these earlier today, that we work with you is through the topic groups. And this has really allowed us to work not only during the plenary meetings, but so that we can work outside of the plenary meetings, by teleconferences, by email as well, and also that we can then look at the key areas that we all want to address in much more depth, and also allows us to bring in some external participants as well, often from the other eligible organizations. And again, it just shows this way that we can all work together through the PCWP, the organizations, and the EMA. So the topic groups we have at the moment are measuring the impact and value of patient involvement, acknowledge and promote visibility of patient input, the involvement of young people, training for patients, and also social media, which is a joint topic group with the healthcare professional organization. So these are very much working groups. People can join when they want if they are interested. Some of them will finalize, as Isabel mentioned today, this year. Some will carry on into next year, and then we'll look at see which other ones we'd like to also establish on an as-needed basis. As well, just one other aspect is very much as we've gone along and as we've increased in terms of involvement, this has come a much wider engagement across the board, and it's also allowed us to share practices. And I think this starts even from across the agency. We're now consulted by the whole range of different departments who come to us and ask for patient involvement. From your side as well, from patient initiatives, you've come to us and said the things that you think we need to discuss, and then we've looked at them together. And you've also brought some of the initiatives that you've worked with on, and you've shared it then with the whole group so that everybody can benefit from what you've been doing. The interaction with the healthcare professionals, Isabel mentioned earlier as well, that not only the interaction during the joint meetings that we're having more and more often, but the fact that you also interact outside of the meetings together as well and can share your different perspectives. Now, one very interesting and quite new development is the interaction and exchange we've had with the FDA. So I also spent 2 weeks at the FDA recently, and a colleague from the FDA came and spent 2 weeks here. And it really was a very fruitful collaboration where we could just really see where each of us had experiences and practices that we then shared with each other. And there was a lot we could learn from each other. And actually, Maria mentioned earlier on, there's some interesting news today that the FDA informed us that when they learned about how we work as a working party, they are now also starting up a working party, and they're launching it today. They wanted to time it with our anniversary, which is very nice. So they want to take our model and also have a kind of a working party with patient organizations as well. So I think that's very nice. And from our side as well, we've started these EMA video basics, which we had learned from them, which is very nice. So this is something we're going to carry on as well. We've started what they call a cluster. So we will have a teleconference 4 times a year with the FDA again on patient engagement to carry on sharing practices. So this is great. EU projects, just to say that, of course, you're involved across the whole array of EU projects, and whenever we have opportunities, we always call out for expression of interest for you to participate ranging from Emprima, NCEP, to the IMI projects, UPATI, but also internally when we're implementing revised legislation or things like this, the clinical trials and things like this, you are always systematically involved, and we very much rely on your input into all of these things. And also national competent authorities. I think you heard a little bit earlier on, but hopefully we now have 10 years experience, and hopefully this allows you as well to perhaps go to your national competent authorities with the experience that you've gained, both good and bad, and also that competent authorities can approach us as well if they'd like to learn from our model. So just where are we going? I mean, I think here you can see the road carries on. It's a little bit wiggly, but it carries on up. And these are just some of the areas that we're not only currently working on, but we will carry on working in the future. Refining feedback, this really links to this measuring the value and input of patient's input. We're constantly asked, what is the value? How do you demonstrate the value of patient input? So this is something we're looking at, just refining and perhaps better explaining how you are involved. We are going to be engaging with young people. As Isabel mentioned, this is something we're approaching slowly, but we will be engaging with young people because they also take the medicines. The PCWP structure. Maybe we need to look at the next mandate and see there's a lot of demand to be part of the working party, and we can only keep to a sort of manageable number of about 20. But maybe next time we can start discussions with you as to the next mandate. Maybe we would have a core group and a more flexible group, but let's discuss it and see. Increase the network. As activity continues, we need more and more input from patients, so we're trying to also increase our network, especially for individual patients who are ready and available to participate and who can also take part in the training sessions. The members' voices, we started this last year and it's been very valuable, where you bring your voices into the meetings and highlight some topics that you've been working on. The CHMP pilot, so let's see if we can then look towards perhaps systematic involvement of patients in the CHMP in the future. Public hearings, this is something else which is going to be starting this year. You heard from Albert earlier on today, and this is another way of really opening the doors. Anyone can participate, and we can very much benefit again from the input that we can receive from the public. Application of patient preferences. This is a new area of looking at supplementing patient data by this quantitative elicitation of patients' preferences. So what are your preferences on these benefits and risks of a given treatment? So this is something we'll carry on working on. Focus groups. This is another area we'd like to explore whether this would also be beneficial. Training. I think we can always look at training and support, see if we can further diversify, if we couldn't perhaps have additional training days. And finally, dedicated workshops. And this is something that, you know, now twice a year we have a dedicated workshop or a session. So of course we very much welcome any suggestions from yourselves on topics and areas of mutual interest that we could perhaps have in the planning. We want to look at more forward planning. What kind of sessions could we have in the future? So I think that just leaves me to say we've been on the road. Hopefully the road carries on for another 10 years. And I'll just finish off by saying happy anniversary. I feel very honored and privileged to have taken part on this journey with you, and I look forward to carrying on. Thank you.
Okay, so now we are going to look forward together with Noël Vatillon, who is the Deputy Executive Director and was very much at the origin of most of the work we have done also with patients and consumers. So please, Noël.
Let me first start by also congratulating the group for its 10th anniversary, and if I will look back a little bit as well, but if you allow me a little bit of nostalgia, I think we have achieved quite a lot, if you see from where we started, despite the fact that we had, let's say, no legal obligation. There's nothing in the law which says explicitly that we have to go in that direction. So rather than being bureaucrats, I would say the opposite. We have seen how much we can do working, of course, within a certain legal framework, but taking a number of initiatives ourselves in order to strengthen the interaction with patients and consumers, and then later on with healthcare professionals and with academia. So I think it has been, I may be biased, but I think it has been a success story. And not only we have to thank you for having participated to this, because on our own we couldn't achieve this. It's also thanks to all of you who are contributing to all the activities. And this is perhaps also the time in order to look at Isabel and her whole team, because you have, through your dedication, your commitment, etc., help achieve this. And that was that contribution should not be underestimated at all. So with these words, if you go, I can perhaps do it myself. So today's achievements, and Wim, you may have seen this because a couple of the slides I used last week at the College Dag in Utrecht, where I was asked, take into account the fact that I'm not going to say I belong to the furniture at the EMA, but I have 20 years, I've celebrated or will be celebrating 20 years of working at the EMA, so I've seen a lot over the past 20 years, positive and negative things. Well, negative, I wouldn't call it negative per se, I would say things that we have seen where we can improve, because at the end of the day, it's that what is important. And over the past 2 decades, I think we have been continuously striving for authorizing and maintaining on the market high-quality, safe, and effective medicines. We have had, as a big support, of course, various pieces of legislation. As I mentioned last week as well, going from one committee with a very simple process to 6 committees in the human field is quite complex and it is challenging. And we also have witnessed an adaptation of what we call the EU regulatory system to all these changing demands, including demands from your side, as I will show in the next slide. Because there have been 3 important, what I call paradigm shifts, which have gradually influenced the regulatory journey since 1996, and they continue to do so. First of all, you have the authorization paradigm, where the emphasis at the beginning was we are going to grant a marketing authorization, end of the story. That's no longer sufficient. We are now talking about timely access to medicines for patients, which goes beyond the simple marketing authorization process. It's all about health technology assessment, about pricing and reimbursement, etc. Then you have yourselves, the civil society involvement paradigm, going from informing civil society to involving civil society and engaging with civil society. So that has also been a very natural process. And the third one is a transparency paradigm, where we were satisfied at the beginning with transparency on the outcome of the scientific review. We are now having more and more questions about what are the underlying scientific data on which the decisions have been taken, alongside the fact that we are asked to provide more clear rationale for the decisions that we have taken. So this has shaped, in fact, the regulatory environment as it is nowadays, and also will continue to do so over the next years to come. There are a number of lessons that we have learned from this exercise. If you look at it in terms of pharmacovigilance, for instance, it was a very reactive approach towards then a much more proactive approach. It was about the need to facilitate innovation and access to medicines, to ensure the sustainability of the EU regulatory network, but perhaps even more about the fact that we need to invest in the robustness of our decision-making. And we have 4 pillars in order to do that. It's about the independence of the regulators' work through transparency, through the way we handle conflicts of interest, etc. It's the design of the regulatory review process with the 6 scientific committees and how they interact with the SACs, scientific advisory groups, the working parties, etc. But perhaps what is more appropriate for today's discussion is about incorporated patients' preferences and values in the scientific review, and improving the transparency of the scientific review, including the rationale for the decisions that we take. And perhaps a few words on that. This is a slide, it's a little bit busy, but this gives you, and I don't have a, how do you call that, something to, I don't have a pointer here, but there are different messages here. So if you look at the bottom, is that? Is that? Okay, but you're looking at various, from various positions, so.
No, you have to move the arrow. Yeah. Yeah.
No. Technique and myself, it doesn't work. So let me try to explain. At the bottom, you have the different scientific committees where you have patient input. Now, patient input can be through membership or it can be through any ad hoc expertise. Thank you, Isabel. So then you go. I hadn't understood it in that way. I thought the red light was going to shine. But so if you go above that, there you see the overall process going from orphan designation up to the post-marketing phase. And then if you go at the top, here you see the different outputs. So the public summaries of opinion up to package leaflets, risk management plan, summaries, safety communications, etc., where you get the patient involvement. So within a glance, you can see that it's not only working through this particular forum, but it's also, I would say, day-to-day activities throughout the scientific review process. In terms of increased transparency, well, we will start in September with the concept of public hearings. So long awaited, I know it has taken quite some time. It's one of those remaining items under the pharmacovigilance legislation. We also had an approach of prioritizing what we want to do first, and this is now, we have come to the stage of implementing public hearings. So we are going to have a dry run in July to see how it works. We'll have communication specialists in order to help us to see how we should behave, etc. And then, as of September, we should be ready in case, of course, we have a candidate, a safety-related referral, which meets all the necessary criteria that you can have a look at on our webpage. Then we can start with public hearings. Then we have taken quite a lot of transparency initiatives, publication of agendas and minutes, so we're quite transparent about what is happening. A next major milestone will be the implementation of the so-called Policy 70, which is the publication of clinical data for medicines for human use. So we are still on target. As of September, we should see the first two, touch wood, the first two products for which an opinion by the CHMP was given in September 2015, where the clinical data will be released. So we are working, well, we have a backlog, unfortunately, that is always, we're starting with those applications for marketing authorization as of January 2015, so it takes approximately 9 months or longer to have the first opinion. We needed to put a lot of IT requirements in place, completely new business processes, etc. They should be ready by August so that as of September we can publish. We will probably reach out to you for a new initiative because this for us it's new. It's new for us, it's new for pharmaceutical industry. We will be on quite a learning curve here. And one of the issues that we will probably have to further look into, because the data will be to a certain extent redacted. They will be redacted because of commercial confidential information, which is not really an issue anymore for clinical study reports. We have a lot of experience, so for us that is not a major issue. The major issue will be how to ensure protection of personal data, so patient information. This is where we need to do still quite some work. Most likely, we are going to have in September a product which is an orphan product, so where we have to be very careful not to release patient information, and you will have a non-orphan product. This is according to our current plan. Now, it has been made very clear to us that we are also responsible for protecting personal data because we are releasing the data in the public domain. And we have been liaising with the EDPS, the European Data Protection Supervisor, who has given very clear views on what we need to do to comply with personal data legislation. However, we'll have to see how that works in practice. We want to achieve the best balance between protecting personal data and the clinical utility of the data so that it is useful what you see. And to achieve that balance, already want to meet expectations here. That balance is not going to be achieved as of day one. So we will be on a learning curve. We are thinking about establishing a technical group on anonymization of data because everybody is struggling with this at this moment in time. And I'm thinking about creating a multidisciplinary group with involvement of patients. So we may reach out to some of you in order to be part of that particular group alongside others. So there will be all kinds of experts there. And we will come back to you through Isabel. We will then see how we can try to have the best representatives from patients in order to make sure that we have a balanced group. But that will be something that's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. Then looking forward, I mean, this is another way of presenting things. So starting from 1995, what is ongoing is a systematic inclusion of real-life experience in the EMA regulatory output. And the last slides are going to be about this. Why doesn't that work? So what's next in terms of interaction with patients? We have this EU Medicines Agency Network Strategy to 2020, which sets out the vision not only for the EMA, but also for the national competent authorities for the next 5 years. And I heard during the coffee break that you are very much in favor of having the same kind of interaction at the national level with the health authorities. And that's something that also HMA, heads of medicines agencies, have understood that there is that particular need. And this will be addressed through their implementation plan. So that is not for the EMA in order to interact. It is a joint undertaking by the EMA and the member states, this network strategy, I think has been presented here, so I'm not going to spend too much time. Now we are in the stage of preparing the so-called multi-annual work plans. If you go to HMA website, you will see the multi-annual work plan for HMA. If you go to the EMA webpage, you will not see it yet for the EMA because it's going to be adopted, hopefully, by the management board on Thursday. And then we will publish it. There are the other groups like CMDH and CMDV, which are doing something similar. So if you look into our multi-annual work plan, so areas of interaction with patients are in various parts of that multi-annual work plan, when the board adopts, of course. You have a strategic objective, ensure timely access to new, beneficial and safe medicines for patients. Here, what you would like to achieve is to capture and incorporate patients' values and preferences in the scientific review process, in particular the benefit-risk evaluation. So you will also see that we will have performance indicators developed, which are about the fact that the processes have been developed and that we would have an increased number of patients' values and preferences included in the benefit-risk assessment. So we will also measure the success of the initiative that we are putting forward and probably measure it on an annual basis. Another strategic objective is to strengthen regulatory capability and transparency and improve provision of information to patients and prescribers, and probably that will be undertaken by having these regular satisfaction surveys. To strive for operational excellence, so share information on medicines within the network and with stakeholders, will be about this access to clinical data, so this policy 70 that I just talked to you about, but also the development and implementation of the so-called European Medicines Web Portal. Another strategic objective is to ensure effective communication of the network and within the network, and that we need to better capture the communication needs and expectations of patients and stakeholders. So every 2 years, a perception survey will be done and will be analyzed. Lessons will be learned, and that will feed back into the overall process. And then the final strategic objective is to strengthen links with other authorities and with stakeholders by involving patients and healthcare professionals, academia more in order to further integrate clinical practice and real-life experience of disease and its management along a medicine's lifespan. Here we will measure the increase in the number for EMA activities and the fact that we are at a regular basis reviewing the framework of interaction with all the different stakeholders, including patients, have lessons learned and then further revised. And perhaps to finish with one of the aspects that we will have to ask, if you also look at Natalie's presentation that she has been given, what, and perhaps it's a debate that we have to start. We know where we are now. We know what we would like to achieve, but that's more or less on the same side of what we are currently doing, but further progressing. But perhaps we should have also a more, how should I say it, in-depth debate as for the next years to come. What do we think is the best role of patients? Should we rethink the role of patients within the context of our regulatory activities? So perhaps that I give to you as something to reflect upon, but I think there is at a given moment the need to see what we have achieved is fine, how do we want to go further, and should we, in order to do that, rethink the role of patients in the overall process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I don't know whether it's a good transition to the final remarks from the executive director, but the topic is about EMA ready to address the challenges ahead. So please, Guido.
I think we can answer already part of this question. With this group, I think we are ready. It's a long journey. It's not that we have done everything. I think the readiness is coming from the very high level of awareness, an incredible knowledge that many of the patient and patient groups are taking about the need of regulation, what is at stake, how to make the best use of the regulation, and what can be the future evolution of this legislation. This awareness is tremendously important because we need to know as a patient what you think about benefit risk, but you need to know the methodology, otherwise that will be lost in translation, as they say, your input and your valuable knowledge and expertise gathered. So I will say to say the other side of the coin of what popped up about the conflict of interest. One other commitment we have, how we can support you. We know that the most of the problem is the perceived dependence or independence. We know that in the most of the case we don't have an issue, but the perception might be different outside. So our question at the EMA is how we can support you better to make your life easier in navigating between your personal life, some of you as a patient, as a regulatory support, as an advocate, and maybe with some private life and professional life, how we can support you without you having to rely on other sources that put you in a difficult situation. This is, I don't have many ideas, I have to admit, but we are very happy to take on board some ideas, how we can all together make some proposal to make it happen, that you can have a more easy environment where to work and where to give this incredible contribution you already have given to the system, to us, and that we have the duty not to make it disperse and to vanify the effort you have made. And thank you once again for bearing with us this.
Thank you very much, Guido. So it's now time to close the meeting. I would like to thank you, all of us, because this working party exists because you are here. I would like to thank the team as well, and overall Maria Mavris, who has been the brain behind this event, but also the arms and the legs. And then looking forward to the next 10 years, and then we can see what we have achieved. And I'm very impatient to see where we are going. So thank you very much again, and I would like to close the meeting here. Thank you.